Our next speaker is Andrea Sinclair, and she is a longtime Vancouver resident, community builder, and local entrepreneur, former PAC chair at Charles Dickens, and a founding member of the Parent Advocacy Network for Public Education. But most importantly, she is mother of twins in elementary school, and for that you get points. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you all for coming. I know most of us are hugely busy, and taking time out to do anything is a big investment, so thank you for joining us here this evening. This is the sort of the PAN presentation. Our table is out, our table is out front, and we just wanted to say a few things along the lines that Alex was sharing, which is trying to kind of get at the facts and at the heart of actually what's going on, and to talk a little bit about advocacy, which if you're new to that, it's a small word and it's not very scary. This is a quote I love. I never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. It's an older quote from Margaret Mead, and I think it stands the test of time. And what it always says to me is that it actually is those small pockets of people changing and pushing change forward. And when I look around the room this evening, what I see are all of you, right? You are here because you care. You are here because you're committed. So you're here. You are those small groups of people, and you go back and you've all got circles of people. And so it is through this sort of combined collective effort that that we can actually make a change. And I would argue over the last 12 to 24 months, if you look at how government is responding, if you look at things that are in the media that maybe weren't, or where the media is paying attention to things and the government, I think we are making a difference. And when I'm speaking to you here, I just wanted to say this. I am not alone. I mean, yeah, I'm totally alone. But as a parent and a member of PAN, I'm also, as Erika so wonderfully put as she opened, we have a steering committee of 14 people, and they are fabulous 14 people. And they have pulled this all together, each of us doing our own bit. But I'm also representing parents and many others who aren't here. It doesn't mean they're not supportive, it just means they're not here. And those are people that haven't necessarily found the loudness of their voice yet. They're working on that. We're also here representing people that cannot speak for themselves, and those are the people we absolutely need to speak for. As if you're parents in the room, you know you're speaking for your children all the time because you are their advocate, you're their number one champion. And we're also speaking for people that, well, they're just kind of on the fringe. They're fence sitters, but they're coming. And I think they're quite a large group. And you may have seen, it was months ago, Mr. Birney made a comment about how we were just a small group and we were a little bit noisy, and it's kind of like we were a fly or a mosquito and kind of annoying. When I hear that, when I hear them trying to belittle the noise that we make, I actually know we're getting through, because he's trying to make us smaller than we are. We are that small group of citizens, and we are making a difference. Friends from Surrey are in the front here. Hi, Cindy. And there are people all over BC, and it is the loudness of their voices. So the more I hear the government push back, the more I know we're getting under the skin. Public education in PAN. Public education is based on a principle of solidarity. And for any of the academes in the room, that's not me, that's Noam Chomsky. But it's all of us caring for all of our children. Investing, even Alex said it, when you invest in education, it pays back dividends for years to come. And we seem to be losing the public of public education. And I'm not pitting private versus public. What I'm saying is there's a small group of people that seem to be making decisions that are not actually the public will. If the Select Standing Committee has said for 2 years running, based on input from citizens, that education is a number one priority, and there's poll after poll and report after report, they don't seem to be listening. So we're kind of losing the public there. And especially, as Alex pointed out, again, there's a surplus. So if we didn't have any money, then sure, you understand the cuts. We all have household budgets. We understand things get cut. But when there's a surplus of money and when there's a systematic decline in the funding that's put there, you do kind of have to ask some of those questions. As I mentioned also, there's strong evidence in BC alone that we are making a difference. The more we rattle the cage, the more they seem to talk. And the education, people sort of ask, like, who do you compare us to? Or you get questions from reporters, well, what would you do? And well, I'm not really a government. I'm not exactly sure what I would do. But if you compare BC to places like Finland, even though it's a country, you can compare it country to province. There are places like that that are doing great things for education, and they completely understand that if you invest in it, the payback is huge for years to come. And they're not the only country. There are many countries. In fact, if you look sort of outside North America, we look a little lame, holistically. So advocacy. Advocacy is one of those crazy words. It's not very big. It's not complicated to say. Look it up. There's the definition for it. It's a noun. Public support for a recommendation of a particular cause or policy. But it's a loaded word. It has different meaning for lots of people. Some of it heavy and some of it light. I've had people say, oh, I don't have time for advocacy. It means a lot. Or I have people who say, oh, email? You want me to write? No, that's way too political for me. And here's my take. And for many in the room, it may be your take as well. It's not a question of political leanings. It's not even a question of how you vote. It's not even whether you love or hate a particular party or which politician you admire or despise. And it's not about ranting, because then you're just way too mad. Now, the anger is a nice motivator, but advocacy is simply arguing for what you believe in. Advocacy is simply saying, that's not right, or that's not how it was, or how it should be, or it's not just, or it's not fair. And I'm going to question that, or I'm going to push back on that. That's what advocacy is. So is that political? I argue no. I argue that as people in a democracy, even in a workplace, if you see something is not right, it behooves us to raise our hand and question or push back and demand for a change. So I don't see that as political. I see that as something we should actually be doing. And when you look at education, if you believe, as I do, that it is something that we are morally and ethically bound to fund, because it is the future, it's tomorrow's people, right? The people in school today are the workers tomorrow. Then shouldn't we? So advocacy, as I said, it means a lot. It means different things to different people. And what does it look like? It can look like this. This is something that Face and Pan did together. We're still promoting it. We started it some months back now. And all you see there on the screen is an image, created a hashtag, and it went viral on social media. We used it to push a message out. We use it to echo another message that someone else said, or that we said, that we started. And that is advocacy. So it doesn't have to be an onerous thing. Advocacy is all the little things, like Margaret Mead said, that the small group of people are doing. And what we're doing is we're amplifying each other, right? So I may say something or do something, and if 10 other people can take that and run with it, that's advocacy. And that's the things that are actually making the difference. And I'll echo this, but it's something that we're feeling very strong about, and Alex mentioned it, select standing committee, right? We did a postcard campaign, because if you have an all-party standing committee and it makes recommendations and you don't listen to it 2 years in a row, that seems like a problem to me as somebody who lives in a democracy. So it's those kind of things. It's pushing back and saying, wait a minute, didn't that committee say this? Wait a minute, how come you're not following those recommendations? That's advocacy. You don't all have to do what I do. You don't all have to do what Alex is doing, or what some other people in the room, you may recognize their faces or have seen what they're doing. But if we all do something small, it's like drips in a bucket. The more there are, the more the bucket just tips. So part of the issue, I find for some people, is there's the rhetoric and the spin, and there's all the government stuff. It's confusion, as Alex mentioned. You kind of have to follow it, and everybody can only follow it to certain degrees. Certainly, maybe not as much as I do, or not as much as someone else might. Some of the confusion lies with understanding who's doing what. Now, Alex already touched on it. In Vancouver and in other districts in BC, you have the province and you have the district, both of whom adhere to the BC School Act, which is, of course, a piece of provincial legislation. On a side note to that, it's the government who used to be responsible for closing schools, as Alex mentioned, but they passed legislation to change this responsibility and deflect back to the school districts. So today's announcement of the $20 million, I'm sure you all heard it, for extra money for school enhancement is a perfect symptom of what is so wrong with the public education system today. This money is for routine maintenance that should be funded routinely. New roofs, boilers, etc. Something that should be funded routinely, not with little chunks of money here and there, and not that you can make hay in the press with, is something that boards are now having to compete for. That's just all wrong. And it's back to the question, or it's back to the issue we have, which is the sustainable, stable funding, and it doesn't actually cover the actual costs of education in our province, and the government is actually shirking its responsibilities. So the province, got some notes up there for you. Per the School Act, they basically hold the purse strings. They're responsible for the funding, and they're responsible for the decisions that actually affect the operating costs, including the 95% capacity target. So they're not really taking input, obviously, because they're not listening to the Select Standing Committee recommendations, and they're still making decisions. The districts are trapped. 95% plus on average get their funds from the province. They don't have other revenue streams. It's not something, that's not how they're set up, it's not how they're built. They're responsible for managing and operating, and as you are well aware, and it's been touched on already, is a lot of the decisions they're making are the nasty, yucky ones, and so they're taking the heat. They're taking it from parents who don't realize that they're making the decisions because they're up against a wall and they haven't got a choice. And they don't have ability to affect the decisions. So if MSP goes up or wages are negotiated or the 95% is put in, they're really only following. They don't actually get to lead. They don't actually get to push back and have any input or a voice at the table when those decisions are made. The VSB staff take their direction from the board's trustees, many of whom are in the room this evening. Thank you. They're the decision makers on school closure and district decisions. But when they're faced with pleas to save a program, provincial politicians often distance themselves by saying these are local decisions. So technically they are. And they are made by the boards, some of the people in this room. But the larger context is getting ignored. The reason they're having to make those decisions is because they're trapped, because the funding is inadequate and it's not sustainable, and they can't work within that paradigm. So I'm going to take a wild guess that many of you in the room might know this, but if you look at just our local school board and the budget shortfall, the board did vote no, and they did reject the budget. But there's still a $21.8 million shortfall, and the cuts are still being made. And so the kids on the front line, the staff on the front line, everybody on the front line has already felt, will continue to feel, or is going to feel if they haven't already, the effects of that. Why? Because as much as the board with huge public support stood up and voted no, because of the School Act, by law, they must pass a balanced budget. By law, the superintendent must actually enact the budget and do the cuts. So those cuts have been happening since June, and they will continue to do so. So what people don't realize is that if you haven't noticed it yet, it really, in my mind, and I can only speak for me, I can't speak for the board, it really is a question of time if you haven't noticed it yet, and you're lucky in the school that you're in. But you will notice it, because when you have almost a $22 million shortfall, that's got to affect everything across the board. And it may be small, and it may be medium, and it may be large, but it's coming. I'm from Dickens, and I always, I've got staff from Dickens, lovely support, thank you. We live in a bubble. Seriously, I tell the parents at my school, you should be blessed, and you should zip it. We have a new school, seismically upgraded. It's not perfect, but you know, it'll stand. We have music, okay? We have some other stuff. But our school is unique. Most schools, not a new building like this one, Strathcona, go check out the state of Strathcona. It's falling down around their knees. It's not good. So there's cuts coming, and it may not be the things that if you attended any of the budget meetings, it may not be the things that were vocal or making the news, music and strings, those kind of things made the news. It's those plus. It's plus all the things you haven't even noticed yet. Take the kindies. I love this one. Kindies go to school, they're status quo, they don't even know that it's not good, right? Because when they get there and everybody goes, oh, well, you just have this, whatever this is. They don't know that yesterday they had this, right? So you start losing what is actually the status quo. You start losing what people actually understand actually should be there in the school. So my point of this slide is to sort of give you some clarity and let you know that the reason advocacy is important within district and every other district is that if you haven't felt it yet, you will. It really is just a question of time. Advocacy moments. This was a good one. This was not us. This was Vista, if I'm saying it right, and many of the other groups, and it was a great display on the lawn at the Vancouver School Board. And it got a lot of people, and it was great. This is just one example of advocacy. Attending an event is a great way to do that. But advocacy isn't always a big splash. It's often hidden, and to many it might feel inconsequential. And it's especially when you don't get a response. So, you send a letter to Mr. Bernier. Well, he either doesn't respond or he doesn't respond for a really long time. Probably because he gets so many. So fair enough. And sometimes it's difficult to see the results of our actions because it's the sum that matters. It's back to the bucket, filling one drop at a time. So in other words, if you think your actions are not making a difference, they totally are. And so I encourage you to keep doing them, or if you haven't started, please do. Again, like I said, when you go back to school on Tuesday, have a look around, ask some questions. Odds are something that was isn't anymore. So how do you advocate? Many of you might know this, but I think it's really quite easy. And again, it's the shape and form that works for you, because we are all super busy, and if you live in Vancouver or Surrey and you have a mortgage, odds are 2 people in your house are working. You got running chauffeurness for kids, you got stuff. So you don't have a lot of time, and the time you have is totally precious. It really just comes down to talking and writing. You're talking on the school grounds, you're talking at your book club, you're talking when you're in the store because you know the clerk. You're sharing the facts and you're busting the myths. The more people know, the more knowledge, the more power they have. Read and learn about the issues. PAN puts as much as we can up on the site to kind of educate as we are learning ourselves. Other groups are doing the same thing. People like FACE, many other advocacy groups, CCPA, right? I mean, go and read that stuff. Alex's stuff, dead easy to read. It's not way lofty and PhD-like. It's right there. And most advocacy just involves talking and listening and writing. So if you can take to social media, if you can retweet somebody, if you can say something, maybe if you can just, next time you're, by your MLA's office, drop in and just talk to them. They're connecting with people is really important, and talking to media, I know it's not a big thing for most of you. They may not seek you out, but they love a parent story, and they will happily talk to you. And by you doing that, and everyone around you doing that, it's back to the amplifying. It's back to the drops in the bucket. There's just more of us, and it's hard to then silence us, and then it's hard to push us away. What are we advocating for? You all know this. I know you do because you're smart. Adequately funded, high-quality public education for all of our kids. We want the implementation of the Select Standing Committee's recommendations. We want a revision of the broken, very broken per pupil funding, and we want a repeal of that 95% utilization capacity target. Those are the things that are just making a mess of the public education system, and that aside from the funding. You can change the funding model, but the amount of funds that are put in, as Alex so eloquently pointed out, is not adequate either. And I've said this one, and I will keep saying it. It is so an election issue. Look around, read the news. The number of people who've spoken out repeatedly through all kinds of mediums, the message, it doesn't change. It's the same. Fund public education. It's a priority. So all the political candidates and the parties need to commit to reprioritizing public education. And as citizens, aside from advocating, come May 9th, you have a chance to speak loud. So it's voting for BC education. So I'm not asking you to vote for one party over another. I'm asking you to get informed and to read and figure out who it is who's actually got the education platform that's going to make a change so that we don't have sort of the crises that we have today. Resources. It's out on the PAN table. The FACE table is out there as well. I just put this up there. Our PANVancouver.ca site. Everything we do, we try to get it up as fast as we can. As Erika pointed out, we're like grassroots with no money, so we go as fast as we can, which is pretty good. If it's not there, email us and we'll try to get it to you. Our BC Ed in Red, it was the image I showed you. It's a great email tool. FACE did a great job of building it. Jen over there. Basically, all you have to do is do 2 or 3 little drop-down menus, and it will send an automated, already written email to your MLA, and it will CC a few other people, and it lets them know. You can edit the message, or you can leave it the way it is, but it just keeps pushing more voices to the people that are making those decisions. FACE BC, their website is up there as well. Connecting. So I'm going to let Helisia take it back, but as I talked about, we've got some Q&A, and then we have some networking out there. I'm hoping you know more than when you sat down between Alex's piece and mine, or even just talking to the people that you were if you were mingling out there for a while. Take the time to connect, take the time to talk and share, and think about 1 or 2 simple things that you can do, or if you could just do 1 or 2 simple things, taking it back to your groups. We've all got groups, right? It's the 10 people who know 10 people who know 10 people. You'd be amazed at how many people that is. It's quite a lot. So if we all just do that, I actually think we'll continue to make a really strong difference. So thank you.